The cabin air tasted stale, recycled 1,000 times over, carrying the faint metallic tang of anxiety and recycled breath. I pressed my forehead against the cool window, watching Rome's lights fade into pinpricks below. My reflection a ghost superimposed over the darkness, 25 years old, and I was fleeing. Again. The worn passport in my jacket pocket felt like both an anchor and a lifeline, evidence of too many departures, too few arrivals that mattered. My seat was near the back, where the engine's roar drowned out everything else. I preferred it that way. Anonymity had become my religion, and coach class was its cathedral. Around me, travelers settled into their own isolated worlds. Headphones on, eye masks secured, the universal signals of "don't talk to me." I understood. I'd perfected those signals myself. The flight attendant's perfume wafted past, something floral and expensive that didn't belong in this section of the plane. I caught the scent trail and followed it with my eyes, watching her hurry toward first class, with an expression I recognized too well, the manufactured calm of someone dealing with a situation spiraling out of control. That's when I heard it. A baby's cry, sharp and desperate, cutting through the engine noise like a blade. Not the fussy whimper of a tired infant, but the raw, primal scream of genuine distress. My body responded before my mind caught up. My chest tightened, a phantom ache blooming behind my ribs. I'd felt this before, this involuntary response to a child's suffering. Some instincts I'd learned couldn't be trained out of you, no matter how hard you tried to become invisible. The crying intensified. I heard murmured voices from first class, the attempted soothing that wasn't working. The baby's screams grew more frantic, and I felt each one like a physical blow. Around me, passengers shifted uncomfortably. A businessman 2 rows up yanked his noise-canceling headphones tighter. A woman across the aisle shot an irritated glance toward the curtain separating us from first class, as if her annoyance could somehow silence the child. I knew I should look away, mind my business, keep my head down the way I always did. But my hands had already begun to tremble, and not from fear this time, from something older, something that lived deeper than survival instinct. The curtain to first class pulled back, and the flight attendant emerged, her professional mask cracking at the edges. Behind her, for just a moment, I glimpsed him. He sat in the first row, and even from a distance, even through the partially obscured view, I could feel the weight of him. Dark suit, so precisely tailored it looked like liquid shadow. His hair was black, swept back from a face I couldn't fully see, but somehow knew was beautiful in the way dangerous things often are. Sharp angles, stern mouth, the kind of beauty that came with a price tag. He held the screaming infant against his chest with a careful rigidity that spoke of unfamiliarity, as if the baby were a grenade with a pulled pin. 2 men flanked him, standing despite the seatbelt sign, their postures identical, hands clasped in front, alert, scanning, security. The kind that didn't wear uniforms, because they didn't need to. Their presence alone announced what they were. The baby's cries reached a fever pitch, and I watched the man's jaw tighten. Even from here, I could see the tension radiating from him, the barely contained frustration of someone accustomed to control finding himself utterly powerless. His hands, large and undoubtedly capable of terrible things, held the infant with a gentleness that seemed to cause him physical pain. The flight attendant said something to him, gesturing helplessly. He responded with a single sharp movement of his head, not quite a nod, not quite a dismissal. The attendant retreated, and the curtain fell back into place, but not before I caught one more detail. The way his thumb moved in small circles against the baby's back, an unconscious gesture of comfort that his rigid posture contradicted. My throat constricted. I shouldn't care. I shouldn't feel this pull, this magnetic draw toward a stranger's distress. I'd built my entire existence around not caring, not getting involved, not letting anyone see the parts of me that still ached to help, to heal, to matter. But the crying. God, the crying. I was standing before I'd made the conscious decision to move. My legs carried me forward on autopilot, my hand reaching for the curtain. The businessman with the headphones glanced up at me with something between pity and disdain, another poor soul unable to tolerate the noise. He didn't understand. This wasn't about tolerance. This was about necessity. My fingers touched the heavy fabric of the curtain, and I hesitated. What was I doing? This was first class. This was a world I didn't belong to, filled with people who would see right through my thrift store jeans and clearance rack jacket. But the baby screamed again, a sound so raw it seemed to tear something open inside my chest, and I pushed through. The transformation was immediate. Leather seats, actual space between rows, warm lighting that didn't make everyone look half dead, and there, in the first row, he sat, up close. He was devastating. Young, maybe early 30s, with the kind of face that would have belonged on Renaissance sculptures if those sculptures had been carved from marble stained with sin. His eyes were the color of espresso, dark and bottomless, and they fixed on me the moment I stepped through the curtain. The force of his gaze was physical, a pressure against my chest that made breathing difficult. The baby in his arms couldn't have been more than 2 months old, face red and scrunched, tiny fists flailing, a boy, from the blue of his onesie, though the outfit was rumpled now, damp with sweat and tears. The 2 guards moved simultaneously, stepping forward to intercept me. I froze, suddenly acutely aware of every poor decision I'd ever made that had led to this moment. But the man raised one hand, just a slight lift of his fingers, and they stopped, remained standing, remained alert, but stopped. "Can I help you?" His voice was accented, Italian silk wrapped around razor wire. Each word perfectly enunciated, the English flawless but unmistakably foreign in its precision. I opened my mouth, and for a horrible second, nothing came out. Then, "The baby." My voice sounded small, insignificant. I might be able to help. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in those dark eyes. Assessment. Calculation. The baby screamed again, and I watched him flinch. Barely perceptible, but there. A crack in the armor. "You're a nanny?" He made it sound like an accusation. "No. How did I explain this? How did I put into words the involuntary response, the biological imperative I'd been running from for 3 years? I know why he's crying. The man's gaze traveled over me slowly, cataloging every detail. My worn clothes, my bitten nails, the way I held myself, hunched slightly, trying to take up less space. I knew what he saw. Someone insignificant, forgettable, poor. He looked at the baby, then back at me. The child's screams had taken on a desperate quality now, the sound of someone past the point of comfort, past the point of reason. "Show me," he said finally. I stepped closer, and the scent of him hit me, cedar and something darker. Something expensive that probably cost more than my rent. His cologne mixed with the baby's smell. That sweet milk and powder scent that made my body respond in ways I'd tried so hard to suppress. The infant's rooting reflex was obvious to anyone who knew what to look for. His tiny mouth opened and closed, searching, desperate. He was starving, and whatever bottle they'd tried to give him clearly hadn't worked. "He needs..." I started, then stopped. How did I say this to a stranger, to this stranger, who radiated danger the way other people radiated warmth? "Needs what?" Impatience edged his tone. The baby's screams reached a crescendo. Around us, I felt the guards tense, felt the pressure of their attention. The flight attendant hovered near the galley, wringing her hands. I took a breath. "He's hungry. He needs to be breastfed." Silence. The kind that preceded explosions. The man's expression didn't change, but I felt the temperature drop. "His mother," he said, each word carefully spaced, "is not available." There was a story there, dark and violent, and I knew better than to ask. I also knew what I was about to offer was insane, reckless, the kind of thing that got poor girls like me into situations they couldn't escape. But the baby screamed, and I felt my body respond. The tingling sensation, the letdown reflex I'd thought I'd suppressed months ago, 3 years since I'd left, since I'd run from the memory of tiny fingers and a warm weight against my chest. 3 years. And my body still remembered. "I can help," I whispered. His eyes narrowed. "You?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "You would..." He paused, and for the first time, I saw something other than cold control in his expression. Uncertainty, maybe, or disbelief. You would do this? For money? No, the word came out too quickly, too honest. Not for money. Then why? Because I had milk and a stranger's baby was starving. Because some instincts transcended common sense. Because 3 years ago, I'd held my own daughter for 7 perfect hours before they took her away for adoption. And I'd been trying to atone for that surrender ever since. Because he's hungry, I said simply. The man studied me for a long moment, and I forced myself not to look away, not to shrink under that intense scrutiny. The baby's cries had weakened now, growing hoarse, much longer, and he'd make himself sick. Finally, the man stood. He was tall, over 6 feet, and the motion was fluid, controlled. He held the baby out to me, and our fingers brushed in the transfer. His skin warm, calloused in unexpected places. The contact sent a jolt through me that I tried desperately to ignore. The infant settled against my chest immediately, instinctively seeking what he needed. I adjusted my hold, muscle memory taking over, and looked up at the man. I'll need privacy, I said. He gestured to the seat beside his. Sit. I meant sit, not a request. A command, delivered with the absolute certainty of someone who'd never been disobeyed. I sat. He remained standing, a wall of expensive suit, and barely contained danger between me and the rest of first class. His guards moved to flank us, creating a human barrier. The flight attendant started forward, but one look from him sent her retreating. My hands shook as I adjusted my jacket, creating a makeshift cover. The baby's mouth found what it needed, and the transformation was immediate. The screaming stopped, replaced by the soft, satisfied sounds of an infant feeding. The silence felt profound, sacred. I looked down at the tiny face, peaceful now, eyes closed in contentment. My chest ached with a familiar grief, but also something else, a rightness I hadn't felt in years. When I finally looked up, the man was staring at me, not at the baby, at me. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes had darkened to something almost black. The intensity of his gaze made me want to squirm, to hide. But I couldn't look away. There was something predatory in the way he watched me, something possessive that had no right to exist between strangers. Your name, he said quietly. I hesitated. Names had power. Names made you real, traceable. Emma, I lied. His mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile. You're lying. My heart hammered. What's your real name? The baby stirred against me, and I automatically adjusted my hold, soothing him back into his feeding. The man's eyes tracked the movement, and something shifted in his expression. Something that looked almost like hunger. Sarah, I whispered, giving him the truth I'd meant to keep hidden. He nodded slowly, as if I'd confirmed something he'd already known. Then he moved, sinking into the seat across the aisle, angling his body toward mine. His posture was deceptively relaxed, but I could feel the coiled tension in him. The sense of a predator at rest, but never truly at ease. I am Dante, he said. Dante Caruso. The name meant nothing to me, but the way his guards shifted suggested it should. The flight attendant had gone pale. Thank you for helping with Alessandro, he continued, gesturing to the baby. He is precious to me. There was weight in those words, darkness in the pauses between them. Is he yours? I asked, then immediately regretted the question. Too personal. Too invasive. Dante's expression hardened. He is now. The baby, Alessandro, finished feeding and drifted into sleep against my chest, his tiny body warm and trusting. I should give him back. I should return to my seat, to my anonymous existence in coach. But I couldn't seem to move. You have done this before, Dante observed. Not a question. I nodded mutely. You have a child? The grief must have shown on my face because his expression softened fractionally. Had, I corrected. I had a daughter. Understanding flickered in his eyes, and with it, something that looked dangerously like sympathy. I'm sorry. I shrugged, trying for casual, achieving broken. It was a long time ago. 3 years, he said. I stared at him, shocked. How could he possibly? The way you hold him, Dante explained. the way your body remembers. 3 years, maybe 4, but the grief is still fresh enough to make you hesitate before helping. You ran from something. From someone. I felt exposed, flayed open under his observation. This stranger saw too much, understood too much. I should go, I managed, starting to rise. His hand shot out, not touching me, but blocking my path. Stay, I can't. Please. The word sounded foreign in his mouth, unpracticed. He is peaceful now. If you leave, he will wake. He will cry again. It was logical, and completely insufficient to explain why I sank back into the seat. Why I let this dangerous man trap me in first class with his sleeping nephew or son, or whatever Alessandro was to him. Dante settled back, his gaze never leaving my face. Tell me, Sarah, where are you running to? I'm not running. That almost smile again. Everyone in Coach is running from something. You more than most. He was right, of course. I was running. Had been running since the moment I'd signed the adoption papers, since I'd chosen survival over motherhood, since I'd learned that love wasn't always enough. London, I said. I have a job interview. What kind of job? Cleaning service. I forced myself to meet his eyes. In a hotel. I expected judgment, maybe pity. Instead, I saw something that looked like respect. Honest work, he said. More honest than mine. Before I could process that admission, Alessandro stirred, making a small sound of protest. Instinctively, I began to rock him, humming softly, an old lullaby my grandmother had taught me. The baby settled immediately, and when I looked up, Dante was staring at me with an expression I couldn't name. You're very good with him, he said softly. Children are easy. It's adults who are complicated. Yes. His voice held layers of meaning I didn't want to unpack. They are. The plane hit turbulence, and Alessandro whimpered. I held him closer, and without thinking, I leaned slightly toward Dante, seeking stability, seeking shelter. He went perfectly still, and I realized with creeping horror what I'd done. I'd invaded the space of a man who radiated danger, who traveled with armed guards, whose very name had made the flight attendant blanch, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned in fractionally closer, and I caught his scent again, cedar and darkness and something wild underneath. Sarah, he murmured, and the way he said my name felt like a claiming. I should have been terrified. I was terrified, but I was also something else, something I didn't want to examine too closely. The turbulence subsided, but the shift in the air between us remained. Dante hadn't moved back to his original position. He stayed leaned forward, close enough that I could count the faint lines at the corners of his eyes. See the shadow of stubble along his jaw, close enough to be dangerous. Alessandro's breathing had evened out into the deep rhythm of infant sleep. His small fist curled against my chest. I should move, should create distance. But my body refused to cooperate, frozen in this strange tableau. A poor girl from nowhere holding a Mafia boss's child 30,000 feet above the Atlantic. How long will he sleep? Dante asked, his voice low enough not to disturb the baby. An hour, maybe 2 if we're lucky. The words came automatically, drawn from a well of knowledge I'd tried to seal shut. He'll need to be changed soon, though, and fed again when he wakes. Something flickered across Dante's face. Uncertainty, perhaps even fear. It was jarring to see such human emotion on features that seemed carved for cruelty. I don't know how to do any of that, he admitted quietly. The confession hung between us, unexpected in its vulnerability. Men like him, men who commanded rooms with a glance, who traveled with armed guards, didn't admit weakness, didn't ask for help. Where's his mother? The question escaped before I could stop it. Dante's expression shuddered immediately. Transformation complete in a heartbeat. The vulnerable man vanished, replaced by something cold and unreachable. Dead. The word fell like a stone into still water, ripples of implication spreading outward. I wanted to apologize, to take back the question, but his eyes warned me against it. 2 days ago, he continued, his tone devoid of emotion now, clinical. She worked for someone who betrayed my family. Her death was unfortunate but necessary. Ice crystallized in my veins. He'd said it so casually, as if discussing the weather, as if a woman's death, a mother's death, was simply a business transaction that hadn't quite gone as planned. "And you took her baby." My voice came out smaller than I intended. "Her baby was fathered by my brother." Dante's jaw tightened. My brother, who she was supposed to love, who she betrayed by working with our enemies, by feeding them information that got 12 of my men killed. So yes, I took Alessandro. He is family. He is blood. And he is mine now. The possessiveness in that last word sent a shiver down my spine. This wasn't a man who simply cared for his nephew. This was a man who claimed things. People, loyalty, lives, with absolute certainty. "Your brother," I started, "is also dead." Dante's eyes never left mine. The same accident that took Alessandro's mother took him as well, which leaves me as the only family this child has. An accident. The word was laughable, dripping with implications I didn't want to examine. I looked down at Alessandro's peaceful face, at the innocence completely unaware of the violence that had orphaned him, of the dangerous hands that now controlled his fate. "Why are you telling me this?" I whispered. Dante leaned back slightly, creating space but not breaking eye contact. "Because you should know what you've walked into, Sarah. What you've involved yourself in by helping me." It sounded like a warning. It felt like a trap already sprung. One of the guards, the taller one with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, leaned down to murmur something in Italian near Dante's ear. Dante responded in the same language, his tone sharp, dismissive. The guard straightened but didn't move away, his attention fixed somewhere behind me. I turned slightly and saw what had caught his attention. A man 3 rows back, phone angled in our direction, taking pictures. Dante noticed my noticing. His expression didn't change, but he made a small gesture with his hand. Barely a twitch of his fingers. The scarred guard moved with fluid grace, crossing the aisle and bending to speak quietly to the photographer. I watched the color drain from the man's face as he frantically deleted images, then handed his phone over entirely. The guard returned, placed the phone in Dante's palm. Without looking at it, Dante slipped it into his jacket pocket. "You can't just take someone's phone," I said, though even as the words left my mouth, I knew how naive they sounded. "I just did." Dante's eyes held dark amusement. "And he won't report it. Will he, Marco?" The scarred guard, Marco, smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "No, boss." He was very understanding about the privacy concerns. I felt Alessandro's weight against me, his trust and vulnerability, and wondered what kind of world I'd stepped into. What kind of man held a baby with such careful gentleness, then casually confiscated a stranger's property with implied threats? "You're scaring her," a new voice said. Female, accented like Dante, but softer. The flight attendant had returned, though this time her approach seemed less about service and more about concern. She was older than I'd initially thought, perhaps 40, with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. "Lucia," Dante greeted her. "You know Sarah? I know you're overwhelming the poor girl." Lucia's gaze swept over me, taking in my cheap clothes, my nervous posture, the way I clutched Alessandro like a shield. "She helped you with the baby out of kindness. That doesn't mean you get to interrogate her." To my shock, Dante's expression softened fractionally. "You're right." Lucia turned to me. "Are you all right? Do you need anything? Water? Something to eat?" The kindness in her voice nearly undid me. I'd been existing on protein bars and vending machine coffee for weeks, sleeping in hostels and train stations, surviving rather than living. The offer of something as simple as food felt overwhelming. "I'm fine," I lied. Lucia's eyes said she didn't believe me, but she didn't push. "I'll bring you both something anyway." She glanced at Dante. "Be nice." She left, and the absence of her maternal energy made the space feel colder, more dangerous. "Lucia has known me since I was Alessandro's age," Dante said, unprompted. "She is one of 3 people in this world who can speak to me that way and live." I didn't ask who the other 2 were. Alessandro stirred, making small sounds of discomfort. I adjusted him carefully, and he settled again, but I could feel the dampness of his diaper through the thin onesie. "He needs to be changed," I said. Dante stood immediately, gesturing toward the front of first class. "The lavatory. It's larger." "I can't just—" "You can." He reached down, and for a heart-stopping moment, I thought he was going to touch me. Instead, his hand hovered near my elbow, guiding without contact. "Come." I rose on unsteady legs, cradling Alessandro against my chest. Marco and the other guard, shorter, broader, with cold eyes, created a path, and suddenly we were moving through first class toward the front lavatory. I was acutely aware of every passenger who watched us pass, of the whispers that followed in our wake. The lavatory was indeed larger, designed for first-class comfort. Dante entered behind me, and the space that had seemed spacious suddenly felt suffocatingly small. He pulled down the changing table, and I laid Alessandro on it carefully. "You're staying?" I asked, fumbling with the diaper bag Marco had handed me. "I need to learn." Dante leaned against the far wall, arms crossed. "Show me." So I did. I talked him through each step, the wipes, the cream, the fresh diaper. Alessandro woke fully during the change, his dark eyes, so like Dante's, focusing on my face. He didn't cry, just watched me with that intense baby stare that sees through all pretense. "Hello, sweet boy," I murmured, unable to help myself. "You're going to be okay. I promise." "Don't make promises you can't keep," Dante said quietly. I looked up at him, at the hardness in his expression that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Someone needs to promise him something good." "The world isn't good, Sarah. The sooner he learns that, the safer he'll be. He's 2 months old, and already he's learned that mothers die. That trust is dangerous." Dante pushed off the wall, moving closer. "You want to promise him goodness? Promise him strength instead. Promise him that he'll survive whatever comes." We were inches apart now, Alessandro between us, and I could feel the heat radiating from Dante's body, could smell that cedar and danger scent that seemed to cling to him. "What happened to you?" The question slipped out unbidden. "To make you this way?" His hand came up, and I flinched instinctively, but he didn't strike. His fingers merely brushed Alessandro's cheek, surprisingly gentle. "I survived," he said simply, "and I made sure no one could ever hurt my family again." The implications in that statement were vast and violent. A knock on the door made us both jump. Marco's voice came through, low and urgent. "Boss, there's a situation." Dante's entire demeanor shifted in an instant, from almost vulnerable to completely lethal. He opened the door, and I caught fragments of rapid Italian, words I didn't understand but whose urgency I could feel. When Dante turned back to me, his expression was unreadable. "We need to return to our seats. Now." He didn't wait for agreement, just scooped Alessandro from the changing table with newfound confidence, and started back toward first class. I followed, confused and increasingly frightened by the tension radiating from the guards. Back in our seats, Dante handed Alessandro to me without explanation. The baby fussed briefly, then settled against my chest, seeking comfort he somehow knew I could provide. Lucia appeared with a tray, sandwiches, fruit, bottles of water. She set it down on the armrest between Dante and me, her movements practiced and calm, despite the obvious tension in the air. "Eat," Dante commanded, his attention fixed on his phone now, fingers flying across the screen. I picked up half a sandwich, more to have something to do with my hands than from hunger, but the moment the first bite hit my tongue, real bread, actual turkey, fresh vegetables, my body reminded me how long it had been since I'd eaten properly. I devoured the sandwich, then reached for the fruit. Dante glanced up, caught me eating, and something softened in his expression. "When did you last have a real meal?" "Yesterday." Another lie. "Try again." I looked down at Alessandro, using him as an excuse not to meet Dante's eyes. 4 days. Silence. Then, "Lucia, bring everything you have. Sandwiches, the salads, the pasta from business class, all of it." "Dante, I can't," Lucia started. "Now." She left without further argument. "You don't need to do that," I said quietly. "I'm fine." "You're starving." His voice held an edge I couldn't identify. "You're feeding my nephew from your own body while you haven't eaten in 4 days. Don't tell me you're fine." The way he said it, my nephew, your body, felt possessive in a way that made my skin prickle with awareness. Lucia returned with enough food for 6 people. She arranged it carefully, then squeezed my shoulder. "Eat, sweetheart. All of it." I wanted to protest, to maintain some dignity, but Alessandro chose that moment to root against my chest again, and my body responded with the familiar tingle of letdown. I needed the calories, needed the nutrition if I was going to keep feeding him. So I ate, and Dante watched me with an intensity that felt like a physical touch. "Why London?" he asked after I'd finished the second sandwich. "Why not stay in Rome? There's nothing for me in Rome. Family?" I shook my head. "Friends?" Another shake. "Lover?" The word came out different from the others, weighted with something I couldn't name. "No." I met his eyes. "There's no one. There hasn't been anyone since—" I cut myself off. "Since you gave your daughter away." The bluntness of it stole my breath. "I didn't give her away. I gave her a better life than I could provide. And you've been punishing yourself ever since." It wasn't a question. Alessandro finished feeding and made a small, satisfied sound. I shifted him to my shoulder, patting his back gently until he burped. The domestic normalcy of the act felt surreal given the conversation we were having. "What do you want from me?" I finally asked. "Why are you asking all these questions?" Dante was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, "Alessandro needs a wet nurse, someone to feed him until we can find a proper formula he'll accept, someone who knows how to care for an infant." My heart stopped. "You can't be serious." "I'm always serious. I have a job interview in London, a life to start. I'll pay you more than any cleaning service ever would." He named a figure that made my head spin. "Plus room and board in my home. Full security, protection." Protection from what? His smile was sharp enough to cut. "From everything, Sarah. Everyone. The world that wants to hurt people like you. People like me? People who are vulnerable, alone, running." He leaned forward and I found myself unable to look away from those dark eyes. "You want to start a life? Start it with resources, with safety, with the knowledge that you'll never go hungry again, never sleep in hostels, never have to choose between food and shelter." It was too much. Too tempting. Too dangerous. "And when Alessandro doesn't need me anymore?" I asked. "What happens then?" Something flickered in Dante's expression. Something that looked almost like hunger. "Then we renegotiate." The way he said it sent heat flooding through me. Inappropriate and unwelcome. "I need to think about it," I managed. "You have until we land." He settled back in his seat, but his gaze never left my face. 4 hours, Sarah. 4 hours to decide if you want to keep running, or if you're ready to let someone protect you for once." Alessandro had fallen asleep against my shoulder, his tiny body warm and trusting. I looked down at him, at the innocent face unaware of the negotiations happening around him, and felt something crack open in my chest. I'd been running for 3 years, running from grief, from guilt, from the memory of a daughter I'd held once and never again. Running toward nothing, toward the illusion of a fresh start that never quite materialized. Maybe it was time to stop running. Maybe it was time to let myself be caught. London's Heathrow Airport materialized through the window, gray tarmac, gray sky, the kind of perpetual gloom that matched the turmoil churning in my stomach. 4 hours had passed in a blur of feeding Alessandro, answering Dante's questions, and pretending I hadn't already made my decision the moment he'd offered me safety. The plane touched down with barely a jolt. First-class landings, apparently, were as smooth as everything else in this world I didn't belong to. Around us, passengers began gathering their belongings, but Dante remained seated, Alessandro sleeping peacefully in my arms. "We wait," he said simply, noting my confusion. "Let them clear out first." So we waited. Marco and the other guard, I'd learned his name was Luca, stood sentinel in the aisle, discouraging anyone from lingering. Through the window, I watched a black SUV pull up directly beside the plane, followed by 2 more identical vehicles. A welcoming committee. Sarah. Dante's voice pulled my attention back. Your answer. I looked down at Alessandro, at the tiny face that had become familiar over the past hours. I'd fed him 3 more times, changed him twice, rocked him through turbulence, and taught Dante how to hold him properly. My body had responded to his needs with an ease that terrified me. Muscle memory overriding 3 years of carefully constructed walls. If I say yes, I began slowly, what exactly would this arrangement entail? You live in my home. You care for Alessandro. Feed him. Comfort him. Help me learn what he needs. In exchange, you receive payment, security, and anything you require. For how long? 6 months initially. Renewable if both parties agree. 6 months. Half a year in the home of a man who casually mentioned murder, who traveled with armed guards, whose very name made people pale. Half a year of safety, of not having to count every penny, of not sleeping with one eye open in hostel beds that smelled like desperation. Half a year of letting myself care for a child who wasn't mine, who would eventually not need me, who would be another loss to add to my collection. I need guarantees, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. I need to know that I can leave if I want to, that you won't trap me. Something dark flickered in Dante's eyes. I don't trap, Sarah. I persuade. But yes, you'll be free to leave whenever you choose, though I should warn you. Once you're under my protection, leaving means you're no longer protected. The world I live in has long memories and violent grudges. Anyone associated with me becomes a target. You're saying if I leave, I'll be in danger? I'm saying the safest place you could possibly be is by my side. He leaned forward, close enough that I could feel his breath against my cheek. But the choice is always yours. I don't keep unwilling prisoners in my home. The word unwilling hung heavy between us, laden with implications I wasn't ready to examine. Okay, I whispered. Yes, I'll do it. Dante's expression didn't change, but something in his posture relaxed fractionally. Good. We'll need to move quickly once we disembark. Stay close to me. Don't speak to anyone. And if I tell you to do something, do it immediately without question. Understood? I nodded, though unease prickled along my spine. The other passengers had cleared out now. Lucia appeared one final time, pressing a piece of paper into my hand. My number, she said quietly. If you ever need anything at all, you call me. Day or night. I clutched the paper like a lifeline. Thank you. She kissed both my cheeks, then Dante's, murmuring something in Italian that made him shake his head. But there was affection in the gesture, a reminder that somewhere beneath the cold exterior, Dante Caruso was still human. Marco handed me a designer diaper bag. Gucci, I realized with a start, packed with everything Alessandro might need. Then we were moving, Dante's hand on the small of my back, guiding me through the empty first-class cabin, through the jet bridge, into the terminal. The airport was crowded, teeming with travelers and noise and the smell of coffee and anxiety. But around us, a bubble seemed to form. People instinctively moved aside as Dante passed, as if sensing the danger that radiated from him like heat. We bypassed customs entirely. A uniformed official simply nodded at Dante, waved us through with barely a glance at our passports. I wanted to protest. This wasn't how things worked. You couldn't just ignore immigration, but Marco's presence at my shoulder kept me silent. The SUVs waited just outside, engines running. The door to the middle vehicle opened, and Dante ushered me inside with a hand that was gentle but unyielding. The interior was cream leather and tinted windows, luxury that felt obscene given where I'd been sleeping a day ago. Dante slid in beside me, close enough that our thighs touched. Marco took the front passenger seat while Luca disappeared into one of the other vehicles. The driver, an older man with silver hair and alert eyes, caught Dante's gaze in the rearview mirror and nodded once before pulling away from the curb. Alessandro stirred against my chest, and I automatically began the swaying motion that soothed him. Dante watched, his expression unreadable. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Kensington. I have a house there." "Not an apartment. A house. In Kensington, where property cost more per square foot than most people earned in a year." The city rolled past the tinted windows, Iconic red buses, black cabs, Georgian architecture mixed with modern glass towers. I'd imagined arriving in London so many times, pictured myself emerging from the tube with my backpack, finding my way to some cramped shared flat in Zone 4 or 5. This version, luxury SUV, Mafia escort, baby in my arms, had never featured in those fantasies. "You're very quiet," Dante observed. "I'm trying to process." "Process what?" "That 24 hours ago I was sleeping in a hostel in Rome with bedbugs and a broken lock on my door. And now I gestured vaguely at the opulent interior, at him, at the armed guards and the designer diaper bag. "Now you're safe," Dante finished. "That's all that matters." "Is it?" I turned to face him. "You've told me what you are, what you do. How is that safe?" "Because anyone who wants to hurt you would have to go through me first." His voice was quiet but absolute. "And I promise you, Sarah, no one goes through me." The conviction in his words should have frightened me. Instead, it sparked something warm and dangerous in my chest, something that felt uncomfortably like relief. We turned onto a tree-lined street, grand white houses rising on either side like temples to wealth. The SUV pulled through an iron gate into a private drive, stopping before a 4-story townhouse that probably cost more than I'd earn in 10 lifetimes. "Home," Dante announced. The door opened, and Marco stepped out first, eyes scanning the surroundings before nodding to Dante. I followed, cradling Alessandro, my legs unsteady after hours on the plane. The air smelled different here, clean, with undertones of money and manicured gardens. The front door opened before we reached it, revealing an older woman in an elegant black dress. She was perhaps 60, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and shrewd eyes that took in everything in a single glance. "Mr. Caruso," she greeted in crisp British accent. "Welcome home." "Mrs. Chen." Dante placed a hand on my back again, that possessive gesture I was beginning to recognize. "This is Sarah. She'll be staying with us, caring for Alessandro." "Please prepare the guest suite adjacent to the nursery." Mrs. Chen's gaze swept over me. My cheap clothes, my exhausted face, my protective hold on the baby, and I saw the exact moment she categorized me. Staff, servant, someone far below her employer's status. "Of course, sir. Will she be taking meals with the family?" The question was pointed, designed to establish hierarchy. "She'll be taking meals with me," Dante said, his tone brooking no argument. "And Mrs. Chen? Sarah is under my direct protection. That means she is to be treated with the same respect you'd show me. Is that understood?" Mrs. Chen's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. "Perfectly, sir." We entered the house, and I tried not to gape. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that probably belonged in museums. Every surface gleamed, every corner perfect. This wasn't just wealth. This was dynasty money, old power dressed in modern luxury. "The nursery is on the 3rd floor," Mrs. Chen explained, leading us up a sweeping staircase. "We've prepared it according to your specifications, Mr. Caruso, though given the circumstances, certain items are still being delivered." The circumstances being that Alessandro's parents had been alive 3 days ago, that this nursery had been assembled in frantic haste for an infant orphaned by violence. The nursery itself was stunning. Soft gray walls, white furniture, every possible baby item arranged with magazine-worthy precision. A crib that looked like it cost more than a car. A changing table stocked with organic products, toys and books, and a rocking chair positioned near tall windows that overlooked a private garden. "And the guest suite?" Dante prompted. Mrs. Chen opened an adjoining door, revealing a bedroom that made my hostel accommodations look like a prison cell. King-sized bed with crisp white linens. An ensuite bathroom visible through another doorway. Windows dressed in silk, furniture that whispered old money. "This is too much," I breathed. "This is necessary," Dante corrected. "Alessandro will wake frequently. You need to be close." He was right, of course, but the intimacy of it, sleeping one room away from Dante's nephew, embedded in his household, under his protection, felt like stepping into a trap I couldn't see the edges of. Alessandro began to fuss, hungry again. My body responded immediately, the letdown reflex triggering even before he'd fully started crying. I should feed him, I said. Use the nursery. I'll have Mrs. Chen bring you something to eat. Dante hesitated, then added, There are clothes in the closet, your size. Lucia texted me your measurements from your passport photo. I stared at him. You bought me clothes. You'll need appropriate attire if you're living here. I have clothes. You have 2 pairs of jeans and 3 shirts, all of which have seen better days. His tone was matter of fact, not cruel. Accept the gift, Sarah. It wasn't really a gift, I realized. It was a transformation. He was dressing me in his world's uniform, making me fit the role he'd assigned me, but I was too tired to argue, too hungry, too overwhelmed. So I simply nodded and carried Alessandro to the rocking chair, settling in to feed him while Dante watched from the doorway. I have business to attend to, he said after a moment. Marco will be stationed in the hallway. If you need anything, tell him. Don't leave this floor without informing him first. Am I a prisoner? The question came out sharper than intended. Dante's expression softened fractionally. You're protected. There's a difference. He left before I could respond, and I heard his footsteps descending the stairs, heard low voices in Italian echoing up from below, then silence, broken only by Alessandro's contented feeding sounds and my own racing heartbeat. I looked around the nursery, at the wealth surrounding me, the luxury I'd never imagined possessing, the golden cage I'd just agreed to inhabit. Through the window, London sprawled gray and indifferent, a city full of people who had no idea what happened in houses like this, behind gates like those, under the protection of men like Dante Caruso. Alessandro's hand found my finger, gripping tight, and I felt something shift in my chest. 3 years ago, I'd held my daughter like this. 3 years ago, I'd made the choice to give her away, to give her the life I couldn't provide. Now here I was, holding another woman's baby, employed by the man who'd ensured that woman would never hold her son again. What had I agreed to? What had I become? Alessandro looked up at me with those dark, trusting eyes, and I realized with creeping horror that it didn't matter. I was already caught, already claimed, already his, and by extension, Dante's. The trap had sprung, and I'd walked into it willingly, lured by promises of safety and the desperate need to stop running. Outside, the London sky darkened toward evening, and in the hallway I heard Marco's measured footsteps, back and forth, a reminder that I was protected, a reminder that I was owned. The first week passed in a haze of sleepless nights and careful navigation. Alessandro woke every 2 hours like clockwork, his cries pulling me from dreams where I was still running, still alone, still free. Each time, I would stumble into the nursery, lift his warm weight from the crib, and settle into the rocking chair while London slept beyond the windows. Dante appeared at odd hours, 3 in the morning, dawn, midday, materializing in the doorway like a shadow given form. He never announced himself, just watched as I fed Alessandro, his presence both intrusive and strangely comforting. Sometimes he would ask questions. Is he eating enough? Why does he make that sound? Should his skin be this color? Other times he simply observed in silence, those dark eyes cataloging every movement, every touch. On the 4th night, I woke to find him already in the nursery, holding Alessandro against his chest with growing confidence. The baby was crying, that particular wail that meant hunger. And Dante's expression held a helplessness that didn't belong on a man who commanded empires. I tried the bottle, he said, when he noticed me in the doorway. He won't take it. I crossed the room, still half asleep, and reached for Alessandro. Our hands brushed in the transfer, and Dante's fingers lingered a moment too long against my wrist, his touch burning even through my exhaustion. He knows the difference, I explained, settling into the chair. Between bottle and breast, some babies are particular. Dante sank into the second chair Mrs. Chen had added to the room. Leather, oversized, positioned so he could watch without hovering. Tell me about your daughter. The request caught me off guard, made me fumble with my nightshirt. Why? Because you loved her. Because you gave her away. Because I need to understand who's caring for Alessandro. It was the most honest he'd been since we'd met. No pretense of business arrangement, no careful distance. Just raw curiosity and something that looked like concern. So I told him. About the pregnancy at 22. About the father who disappeared the moment he'd learned. About the 7 hours I'd held her before signing the papers. About choosing open adoption. About the letters I received twice a year. Photos of a little girl with my eyes growing up in a house with a yard, and 2 parents who loved her. Her name is Lily, I finished, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. She's 3 now. Happy. Healthy. Everything I couldn't give her. Dante was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on Alessandro. You think you failed her? I did fail her. No. His eyes met mine, fierce and certain. You loved her enough to give her more than you had. That's not failure, Sarah. That's sacrifice. The validation in his words cracked something open inside me. Some dam I'd built from guilt and grief. Tears spilled down my cheeks before I could stop them, and I turned away, mortified. I heard him move, felt him kneel beside the chair. His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing away tears with a gentleness that seemed impossible from someone capable of such violence. Don't hide from me, he murmured. Not here. Not in my home. His home. His rules. His possession. But his touch was so careful, so unexpectedly tender, that I found myself leaning into it, despite every warning bell clanging in my head. Alessandro finished feeding and dozed against my chest. Dante's hand slipped from my face to the baby's back, and for a moment, we formed a strange tableau. The 3 of us connected in the dim nursery light, bound by need and circumstance and something more dangerous neither of us wanted to name. I should put him down, I whispered. Dante nodded but didn't move. His hand remained on Alessandro's back, fingers spread wide, protective. I've never been responsible for someone so small, so breakable. You're doing well with him. Because you're here. His eyes found mine again. Don't leave, Sarah. Whatever I pay you, I'll double it, triple it. Just don't leave. The desperation in his voice terrified me more than any threat could have. This was a man accustomed to control, finding himself utterly dependent on a stranger, on me. The power imbalance we'd started with had shifted somehow, become muddied and complicated. I'm not leaving, I promised, though I wasn't sure which of us I was trying to convince. By week 2, a routine had established itself. I woke with Alessandro's cries, fed him, changed him, played with him in the nursery while Dante conducted business in his study down the hall. Mrs. Chen brought meals, elaborate restaurant-quality food I'd never have been able to afford, and I ate in the nursery, afraid to venture further into the house, into Dante's world. But Dante had other plans. You're eating dinner with me tonight, he announced one afternoon, appearing in the nursery doorway in a different suit. Charcoal instead of black, equally expensive. Mrs. Chen is preparing something special. I can't just leave Alessandro. Marco's daughter is a nanny. She'll watch him for 2 hours. He stepped into the room, and I noticed he'd shaved, that the perpetual shadow on his jaw was gone, making him look younger, almost approachable. This isn't a request, Sarah. Of course it wasn't. Nothing with Dante was a request, even when he phrased it politely. I showered in the ensuite bathroom. Marble and gold fixtures, water pressure that felt like luxury incarnate, and opened the closet Dante had filled. The clothes inside were beautiful, expensive, nothing I would have chosen for myself. I selected the simplest option, a navy dress that fell to my knees, elegant, but not ostentatious. When I emerged, Marco's daughter, a cheerful girl named Sophia, who couldn't have been more than 19, was already cooing over Alessandro. She had her father's dark hair, but none of his intimidating presence. He's adorable, she gushed. Don't worry about a thing. Papa says you're very important to Mr. Caruso, so I'll take extra special care. Important. The word settled uncomfortably on my shoulders. I found Dante in the dining room, a space I'd glimpsed only in passing, all dark wood and crystal. The table could have seated 20, but only 2 places had been set, intimately close at one end. He stood when I entered, a gesture of courtesy that seemed at odds with everything else about him. You look beautiful. The compliment made heat crawl up my neck. The dress is lovely. Thank you. The dress is just fabric, Sarah. You make it beautiful. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I simply took the seat he held for me, hyper-aware of his proximity as he pushed the chair in. Mrs. Chen served us herself. Something I'd learned was unusual, a sign of the meal's significance. Roasted chicken with herbs I couldn't name, vegetables that looked like art, wine that probably cost more than my former monthly rent. "I don't usually drink," I said when Dante poured for both of us. "Neither do I, usually, but tonight feels like an occasion." He raised his glass. 2 unexpected solutions. I touched my glass to his, took a sip, and felt the wine bloom warm in my chest. We ate in silence for a few minutes, the clink of silverware the only sound. Then Dante set down his fork and leaned back, studying me with that unnerving intensity. "You've been here 2 weeks, and you haven't left the 3rd floor. I have everything I need up there. You're hiding." "I'm being appropriate." I met his gaze. "I'm staff, Dante. I don't belong in the rest of your house." His expression darkened. "You're not staff. You're under my protection, which makes you untouchable, which means you go where you like, do what you like, within reason. Within reason being whatever you decide. Yes. No apology, no pretense. That's how this works, Sarah. I keep you safe, you follow my rules, but that doesn't mean you're a prisoner. It means you're valued, protected, owned." The words kept shifting, meanings bleeding into each other. "What if I want to go out?" I asked. "See the city? Have some freedom?" "Then Marco goes with you." "That's not freedom. That's survival." Dante leaned forward, and I could smell his cologne again, that cedar and danger combination that made my pulse quicken. "You want to know what happens to people associated with me who go out unprotected? Last month, one of my accountant's wives went shopping alone. She was taken, held for ransom, tortured for information she didn't have. We got her back, but she'll never be the same." The brutality of it struck me like a physical blow. "You're trying to scare me. I'm trying to make you understand. The world I live in doesn't forgive mistakes, doesn't show mercy to the innocent. You think you're just some girl taking care of a baby, but to my enemies, you're leverage. You're a weapon they can use against me." "Then why keep me here at all?" Frustration made my voice sharp. "Send me away. Find someone else to feed Alessandro." "No." The word came out hard, final. "You're staying." "Why?" "There must be dozens of wet nurses you could hire." "Because he trusts you." Dante's voice dropped to something almost raw. "Because in 2 weeks, you've become the only stability in his life. Because when he cries, he calms for you. Because you look at him like he matters, like he's more than just the son of a traitor and my dead brother." The confession hung between us, stripping away the pretense we'd both been maintaining. "And because," he continued, quieter now, "I trust you, which is something I extend to perhaps 5 people in this entire world. I should have felt honored. Instead, I felt trapped, weighted down by expectations I'd never asked for. I didn't ask for this responsibility," I whispered. "Neither did I." His hand reached across the table, covering mine. "But here we are, Sarah, 2 people who didn't ask for any of this, trying to keep one innocent child safe in a world that wants to destroy him." His touch was warm, slightly calloused, and I knew I should pull away, knew this was crossing some invisible line from professional to personal, from protected to possessed, but I didn't move, couldn't move. "Tell me something," Dante said, his thumb tracing circles on my wrist. "When you dream, are you still running?" The question struck too close to truth. "Yes." "From what?" "From everything. From myself." His grip tightened fractionally. "You don't have to run anymore. I won't let you." It should have sounded like a threat. Instead, it sounded like a promise. We finished dinner in charged silence, the air between us humming with things unsaid. When Mrs. Chen cleared the plates, Dante stood and offered his hand. "Walk with me." It wasn't a request. He led me through the house, room after room of impossible luxury, until we reached a conservatory I hadn't known existed. Glass walls revealed the private garden, now lit by subtle landscape lighting. Inside, tropical plants created a jungle of green, the air humid and fragrant. "This was my mother's favorite room," Dante said, guiding me to a bench beneath a flowering vine. "She died when I was 12, cancer." The personal detail felt like a gift, an offering of vulnerability. I'm sorry. Don't be. She was weak, and weakness killed her. But his voice held an edge that suggested the words were rehearsed, a philosophy he'd been taught rather than believed. That's not how cancer works, isn't it? He turned to face me, and in the low light, his features looked softer, almost boyish. She knew the life my father led, knew the danger. Could have left, could have taken me and disappeared, but she stayed because she loved him, and that love made her weak, made her a target. Love isn't weakness. No. His hand came up, cupped my face again in that gesture that was becoming familiar, dangerous. Then what do you call it when caring for someone gives your enemies power over you? When their safety becomes more important than your own? His thumb brushed my lower lip, and heat flooded through me. Inappropriate and undeniable. Dante, I breathed, half warning, half plea, I know. His forehead touched mine, and we stayed like that, breathing the same air, teetering on the edge of something neither of us should want. I know this is wrong. I know I shouldn't. But Sarah, God help me. I can't stop thinking about you, can't stop wanting to keep you here, safe. Mine. Mine. That possessive word again, the one that should send me running but instead made something clench low in my belly. This can't happen, I whispered. I work for you. I take care of Alessandro. This would complicate everything. Everything is already complicated. His nose brushed against mine, a whisper of contact that made my breath catch. Tell me you don't feel this. Tell me I'm alone in this madness, and I'll back away. I'll never touch you again. But I couldn't tell him that. Couldn't lie when his breath was warm against my lips, when my body was betraying me with every racing heartbeat. I feel it, I admitted. But that doesn't mean... He kissed me. It was soft at first, questioning, giving me space to pull away, but when I didn't, when I made the fatal mistake of kissing him back, it deepened into something hungry, desperate. His hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer, and I let myself drown in the taste of wine and want and terrible decisions. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, reality crashed back in. I should check on Alessandro, I managed, standing on shaky legs. Dante caught my wrist, his grip gentle but unyielding. Sarah, this doesn't have to mean anything changes. You're still safe here, still protected. Everything just changed, I said quietly. You know it did. I left before he could respond, fled back through the beautiful house to the third floor where Sophia sat, reading, Alessandro asleep in his crib. She left with a knowing smile that made me want to sink through the floor. Alone in my room, I touched my lips, still feeling the ghost of Dante's kiss. Still tasting the danger I'd just invited into my carefully constructed walls. I'd come here to stop running. Instead, I'd just run straight into the arms of the one man who could destroy me completely. 3 weeks after the kiss, Dante hadn't touched me again, hadn't tried to corner me in the conservatory, or appear in the nursery at midnight with hunger in his eyes. Instead, he'd retreated into cold professionalism, discussing Alessandro's needs in clipped tones, avoiding eye contact, treating me with the distant courtesy reserved for valued employees. It should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like loss. Alessandro was thriving. He'd gained weight. His cries had become less frequent, and he'd started smiling, real gummy grins that lit up his whole face. I'd taught Dante how to bathe him, how to read his different sounds, how to hold him so he felt secure. Watching this dangerous man gentle himself for an infant had become my favorite daily ritual, even if Dante barely looked at me during the lessons. On a gray Tuesday morning, everything changed. I was in the nursery, changing Alessandro's diaper and singing softly, when Marco burst through the door without knocking. His face was ashen, his usual composure shattered. Sarah, you need to come with me, now. Fear spiked through me. What's wrong? Is Dante? Boss is fine, but there's a situation. Bring the baby. I scooped Alessandro up, didn't bother with shoes, just followed Marco down the stairs in my bare feet and pajama pants. He led me not to Dante's study, but to the basement, a part of the house I'd never seen. accessed through a hidden door in the kitchen. The basement was finished, comfortable even, but clearly designed as a safe room. Reinforced walls, security monitors, supplies stocked on metal shelves. And in the center of it, all stood Dante, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian with an edge of fury I'd never heard before. He ended the call when he saw us, crossed the space in 3 strides, and pulled me against his chest with Alessandro crushed between us. The embrace was brief, but fierce, desperate in a way that terrified me more than Marco's panic had. "What's happening?" I demanded when he released me. "Someone leaked information about Alessandro, about you." Dante's jaw was tight enough to shatter. "There are men watching the house, professionals. They'll make their move soon. Tonight. Tomorrow. I'm not waiting to find out." "Move? What kind of move?" "Kidnapping. Leverage." His hand cupped my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. "You and Alessandro are targets now, Sarah. I'm getting you both out of London. Out of... where? Italy. To my family's estate in Tuscany. It's a fortress, fully secured, impossible to penetrate." He was already moving, grabbing a bag Marco handed him, checking his weapon with practiced efficiency. "We leave in 20 minutes. My mind reeled. I can't just leave. I don't have papers. I have everything you need." He caught my hand, squeezed hard enough to hurt. "I know this is frightening. I know you didn't sign up for this level of danger. But Sarah, I will die before I let anyone hurt you or Alessandro. Do you understand me? I will burn the entire city down before I let them take you." The vehemence in his voice, the raw possession, should have scared me. Instead, it sparked something fierce and answering in my chest. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay, we'll go." Relief flickered across his face, quickly masked. "Marco, Luca, and 4 others will travel with us. Mrs. Chen is already at the estate preparing your rooms." He pressed a quick kiss to Alessandro's head. Then, as if he couldn't help himself, to my forehead. "Pack only what you absolutely need. We move fast." The next 20 minutes were chaos. I threw clothes into a bag with shaking hands while Sophia, who'd appeared from somewhere, packed Alessandro's supplies with calm efficiency. Dante moved through the house like a storm, issuing orders, checking weapons, coordinating our exit. We left through the back garden, through a gate I hadn't known existed, into an alley where 3 armored SUVs waited, engines running. Dante bundled me into the middle vehicle, Alessandro in my arms, Marco and Luca flanking us, the other guards split between the remaining vehicles. "Private airfield," Dante told the driver. "Route 3. We pulled out, and I watched through the tinted windows as Kensington blurred past. My heart hammered so hard I thought Alessandro might feel it. But the baby remained calm, trusting, unaware of the danger we were fleeing. Dante's phone rang constantly. Terse conversations in Italian, orders given and received. His free hand found mine, laced our fingers together, held on like I was the only thing anchoring him to sanity. "I'm sorry," he said quietly during a lull in calls. "I'm sorry I brought this into your life. Sorry I made you a target. You gave me safety," I replied. "Protection. This isn't your fault." "It is, though." His thumb traced circles on my palm. "Everything I touch eventually gets destroyed. Everyone I care about becomes a liability. I should have sent you away the moment I realized I was starting to..." He cut himself off, jaw clenching. "Starting to what?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw everything he'd been hiding for 3 weeks. The want, the fear, the desperate, dangerous thing growing between us. "Starting to need you," he finished roughly. "Not just for Alessandro, for myself." Alessandro chose that moment to fuss, and I shifted him automatically, offering comfort. Dante watched the motion, something softening in his hard expression. "You're so good with him," he murmured. "So natural, like you were meant to be his. He's not mine to keep, isn't he?" Dante's hand moved to Alessandro's head, his touch gentle. "You fed him from your body, comforted him through the night, loved him when he had no one else. If that doesn't make him yours, Sarah, then what does?" The implication in those words, that Alessandro was ours, that we'd somehow become a family, made my throat tight. We reached the airfield in under an hour. A private jet waited on the tarmac, stairs already lowered, more guards visible near the entrance. Dante ushered me aboard quickly, his body a shield between me and any potential threats. The plane's interior was pure luxury. Leather recliners, a bedroom and back, even a small area clearly set up as a temporary nursery. Someone had thought of everything. 6 hours to Tuscany, Dante said, settling beside me as the plane began to taxi. Try to rest. It's going to be a long few days. But I couldn't rest. Couldn't stop replaying his words. Starting to need you. Couldn't stop feeling the weight of his hand in mine. The way he'd kissed my forehead like a promise. Alessandro fell asleep shortly after takeoff, milk-drunk and content. I laid him in the travel bassinet someone had secured near my seat, then turned to find Dante watching me with that intense, unreadable expression. Ask me, he said quietly. Ask you what? Whatever question is burning in your mind. I can see it, Sarah. You want to know something. I took a breath. What happens when we reach Tuscany? What happens when Alessandro doesn't need me anymore? When he's weaned and eating solid food and I'm not necessary? Dante leaned forward, elbows on his knees, close enough that I could count his eyelashes. What happens is whatever you want to happen. You want to leave? I'll set you up anywhere in the world. Enough money to live comfortably for years. You want to stay? His voice dropped lower, rougher. Then you stay. As Alessandro's caretaker, or as something more. The choice is yours, Sarah. It's always been yours. Something more, I repeated. Like what? Like mine. The word fell between us, heavy and irrevocable, not as an employee, not as staff, as someone I protect because I want to, because I need to, because the thought of you out in the world without me makes me violent. My heart was doing strange things in my chest, racing and stuttering. That's not healthy, Dante. That's not... I know. He reached up, cupped my face with both hands now, forcing me to hold his gaze. I know it's obsessive, possessive, everything wrong and dangerous about me. But I can't help it, Sarah. From the moment you walked through that curtain on the plane, something shifted. You looked at Alessandro like he mattered, looked at me like I was human despite everything you knew about me. And I was lost. This is crazy, I whispered. We barely know each other. I know you bite your nails when you're nervous. I know you hum the same lullaby to Alessandro every night. Something your grandmother taught you. I know you cry in the shower when you think no one can hear, grieving the daughter you gave up. I know you take your coffee black because you can't afford to develop expensive tastes. I know. I kissed him to shut him up, to stop the litany of observations that proved he'd been watching me as intently as I'd been trying not to watch him. This kiss was different from the first, less desperate, more deliberate. A choice, rather than a surrender. When we broke apart, Dante's eyes were dark with want, and something deeper, more dangerous. Tell me you'll stay, he demanded. Tell me this isn't just until Alessandro is weaned. Tell me... I'll stay, I interrupted. The words felt like jumping off a cliff, terrifying and liberating. Not forever. I can't promise forever, but I'll stay, Dante. For now. For as long as this works. Relief crashed across his features. He pulled me against his chest, and I went willingly, let myself be held by this dangerous, damaged man who'd somehow become essential to my survival. For now is enough, he murmured against my hair. For now, I can work with. The Tuscan estate was everything he'd promised. Ancient stone walls, sprawling vineyards, security that would make a military base jealous. The main house dated back centuries, all high ceilings and frescoed walls and the kind of history you could feel in the stones. Mrs. Chen had outdone herself. My rooms, because they were mine now, plural, a whole suite, connected to the nursery, which connected to Dante's bedroom. A deliberate arrangement that made his intentions crystal clear. The first night, after I'd fed Alessandro and put him down, Dante appeared in my doorway, not asking permission, just standing there with an expression that made my pulse race. Can I come in? I nodded, unable to speak around the anticipation clogging my throat. He crossed the space slowly, giving me time to change my mind. When he reached me, His hands framed my face with a gentleness that contradicted everything dangerous about him. "I want you," he said simply. "Have wanted you since the moment you offered to help a stranger's baby. But Sarah, if we do this, if we cross this line, I won't be able to let you go easily. My possessiveness, my need to protect and keep and own, it will only get worse. So I'm asking you now, are you sure?" I should have said no, should have maintained boundaries, protected my heart, but I was tired of running, tired of denying myself connection because I was afraid of loss. "I'm sure," I whispered. He kissed me then, deep and claiming, and I kissed him back with equal fervor. His hands were everywhere, my hair, my waist, pulling me closer until there was no space between us. When he lifted me, I wrapped my legs around him instinctively, and he carried me to the bed without breaking the kiss. What followed was intense, overwhelming, everything I'd known it would be with him. He was demanding but attentive, possessive but careful, and when it was over, when we lay tangled together in sheets that smelled like lavender and him, I felt something shift inside me, some final wall crumbling. "Mine," he murmured against my shoulder, the word both question and statement. "Yours," I agreed, too sated and safe to lie. 6 months later, Alessandro took his first steps in the estate's garden, wobbling between Dante and me with a gummy grin. He'd been weaned for 2 months now, eating solid foods with enthusiastic mess, but I'd stayed. Not because of any contract or obligation, but because somewhere between London and Tuscany, between fear and safety, I'd fallen in love. With Alessandro, yes, but also with Dante, with his fierce protectiveness, his unexpected gentleness, the way he'd learned to be human again through caring for his nephew, through loving me. We'd married quietly 3 weeks ago. A small ceremony in the estate's chapel with only Marco, Luca, Mrs. Chen, and Sophia as witnesses. No grand celebration, no announcement to the world, just vows spoken in candlelight. Rings exchanged with trembling hands, and the promise to protect each other the way we'd protected Alessandro. I still wrote letters to Lily's adoptive parents, still cherished the photos they sent, but the grief that had driven me for 3 years had softened into bittersweet acceptance. I'd made the right choice for her, and now I was making the right choice for myself. "Mama!" Alessandro squealed, stumbling toward me on unsteady legs. The word stopped my heart. He'd started saying it 2 weeks ago, and Dante had immediately offered to correct him, to teach him I wasn't his biological mother. But I'd asked him not to, because in every way that mattered, I was Alessandro's mother. I fed him, comforted him, loved him with a fierceness I'd thought I'd lost forever. I caught him as he reached me, swung him up into my arms. "Such a clever boy. You walked all by yourself." Dante appeared beside us, his arms wrapping around both of us, creating a circle of safety and warmth. "My family," he murmured, pressing a kiss to my temple, then Alessandro's head. "Our family," I corrected, reaching up to touch his face. He caught my hand, kissed my palm. "Our family," he agreed. That night, after Alessandro was asleep in his nursery, Dante and I stood on the terrace overlooking the vineyards. The Tuscan sunset painted everything gold and rose, the air warm with late summer. "Do you ever regret it?" Dante asked quietly. "Saying yes on that plane? Staying when you could have run?" I thought about the girl I'd been, running from grief, running from connection, convinced that safety meant solitude. Then I thought about the woman I'd become. Strong enough to accept protection, brave enough to risk her heart, wise enough to know that sometimes the scariest choice is the right one. "Never," I said, and meant it absolutely. Not for a single moment. He pulled me closer, and we watched the sun sink below the hills, painting the sky in shades of promise. In the nursery, Alessandro slept peacefully, protected by walls both literal and metaphorical, and in my chest, my heart beat steady and sure, no longer running, just living, just loving, just home. Behind us, the ancient estate stood solid and eternal, a fortress that had weathered centuries. Inside its walls, a new family had been forged, not from blood and tradition, but from necessity, choice, and the kind of love that grows in the spaces between danger and safety. I'd boarded that plane to London, running from my past, desperate and alone. I'd walked through a curtain into first class, seeking only to help a crying baby. Instead, I'd found everything I'd been running from: purpose, protection, family, love. And when Alessandro woke at midnight, as he sometimes still did, when Dante and I both responded to his cries, when we stood together in the nursery bathed in nightlight glow, that's when I knew with absolute certainty that some traps are worth walking into. Some cages are meant to feel like home.